The last couple of weeks as we welcome you to a brand new hour now of America's Newsroom. Welcome, Bill Hemmer.
Yeah,
Martha McCallum.
Right back to you, sir.
He's working.
I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. A flurry of appointments from Mr. Trump already today, including picks for Treasury Secretary and Secretary of Commerce. A lot of people, though, talking about this dinner last night between Mr. Trump and Mr. Romney, the former rival having nothing but kind words to say after the meal. Here's part of that.
He continues with a message of inclusion and bringing people together, and his vision is something which obviously connected with the American people in a very powerful way. I have to tell you, I've been impressed by what I've seen in the transition effort. The people he selected as members of his cabinet are solid, effective, capable people.
What a difference a few weeks can make. Reince Priebus is president-elect of Trump's incoming administration, and the White House chief of staff will be his position, of course. He's leading a lot in this transition process, and he was the third person that you see there on the left-hand side at the dinner last night. You know him well, Reince Priebus. Good morning to you, sir. Good to have you with us today.
Good morning, Martha.
You know, there's a lot of ways to have these meetings. Most of them have been behind closed doors at Trump Tower. This was the second meeting that Mitt Romney had. He was at the Bedminster Golf Course last time. But this was so public. There were cameras that were allowed in. Why so public a courtship between Mr. Trump and Mr. Romney?
Well, as you know, I mean, we're also getting used to having a press pool with us, and that's part of the process, is that when you're President of the United States, and in this case President-elect, it's par for the course that you allow a quick photo with the press. They're stationed usually outside, either wherever we go or at Trump Tower, one way or the other. This was going to be public. So, look, I think what people should be seeing here is a huge, encouraging sign about leadership and the ability of President-elect Trump to just talk to the best people in America, regardless of background, and make sure that in every decision that's made, that the best person to lead our country is chosen for each of these spots, and that's what he's trying to do.
So, but why is this particular relationship apparently very important to Mr. Trump?
Because I think he sees a lot of talent in Governor Romney. Nothing's certain, and it's still up in the air, but he wants to make sure that when he's talking to Mayor Giuliani, he's talking to David Petraeus, Senator Corker, Governor Romney, that when he makes the decision, it's the decision that's best for America, regardless of background. But, you know, there's obviously a comfort level that needs to take place, and that's sort of the piece that's being worked on right now. And you know, they had a great dinner last night, very encouraging, but again, not a done deal, but certainly positive.
You know, there's been a lot of discussion that Mitt Romney would have to apologize for calling him a phony, calling him a con man, really going out of his way, as Kellyanne Conway said, to try to tear down Donald Trump during the course of this campaign. Last night he came before the cameras. We showed a little bit of it a moment ago, and said he was really encouraged by the way things are going and the people that Donald Trump is surrounding himself with. Is that enough? Was that the apology that you all were looking for?
Well, I wouldn't say there's no quid pro quo here. I mean, there's no, you know, there's no deal as far as what you say. But he has to have some comfort level. You have to have, you know, Mitt Romney say enough nice things so that you guys feel like, you know, like you can maybe bury that videotape about the Trump steaks and the Trump vodka. Well, look, I mean, all those things are important, but, you know, the comfort level is the most important. But I think what people need to understand is, and what I've learned, and I'm sure some of, either you or some of the folks there at Fox and other places that, and people across America, a lot of people don't know Donald Trump. And when you get to know this person, you find out how gracious and personable, big, big heart. And you see that by the fact that he's actually sitting down now 2 times with Governor Romney, a person that has a big enough heart and a willingness to put the American people first, that he's even in a place of talking to Governor Romney, and in fact then also having real substantial personal conversations that are very positive. And so that's a big person. And a lot of people wouldn't do that. But I think that should be what people should see in President Trump.
I think it's fascinating, actually, to watch all of this unfold. I think a lot of people feel that way. We spoke to Mike Huckabee earlier, though, and he seems a little testy about the way all of this is unfolding. Watch this.
Sure. Both Reince Priebus and Donald Trump were having filet. On Mitt Romney's plate, there was a big slice of crow. And so I didn't know if you could catch that or not. Look, the irony here is that it's not so much about the relationship that Donald Trump has with Mitt Romney. It's the relationship that Mitt Romney has with the voters who elected Donald Trump. Because Mitt Romney said that they were a bunch of suckers to follow him.
Yeah, he feels hurt. It appears that a lot of people were grouped in with Mitt Romney's criticism. And you look at the fact that Mike Huckabee and Rudy Giuliani, Newt Gingrich, some of the strongest supporters from early on of Donald Trump, have not appeared on that big screen that we put up showing people who've retained positions with the administration.
Well, I certainly understand where the governor's coming from, and I think and President-elect Trump understands it too. That's why this is a sensitive subject. That's why it's something that it's going to take a lot of deliberation, and that's why I don't think anyone should expect, anything imminent on this position yet. But I do think that people should be encouraged by the fact that we have a president-elect that's willing to talk to people that are either very knowledgeable, very talented, very smart, to either choose those people or at the very least glean information from people that we can learn from. Don't be discouraged by any of this other than to say that the right decision will be made for the American people. And I can assure everybody that that's exactly the mindset that President-elect Trump has. And it's a very presidential, mature position and place for him to be in. And that's where he's at every day. And you're seeing it by the appointments that he's making across the board.
Well, we remember him saying, "I can be very presidential. You just watch." And we're seeing
it's been an incredible transition
emerging during this transition. What can we look forward to in terms of these appointments? You said nothing is imminent on the Secretary of State. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't expect anything today on this or tomorrow. I just think that he is going through a deliberative process to, in his own mind, to kind of cut out the noise and make the smartest decision that he can make for the American people. He's President of the United States. Nothing's going to change that. And so now it's a matter of making sure that the best and brightest are around him. That's what he pledged to the American people. And that's what he's doing.
What's the focus in terms of the next announcements? What should we expect? What's coming next?
Well, I think you saw some things today that will be more formalized during the day in Steve Mnuchin at Treasury, Wilbur Ross at Commerce. These are people that were part of, and just for the record, so people understand, when Donald Trump's plans were laid out months ago and when the speech was given about the first 100 days, it was Steve Mnuchin, Wilbur Ross, and others, and obviously President-elect Trump editing and working on the plans that help write those plans. Right. And so these are people that are in step and in the wheelhouse of what Donald Trump wants to do economically, and now they're in positions to help carry out that task.
What can you tell us before I let you go about the separation from his businesses? What's going to happen when, one of his children, who he talks to all the time, says, we're talking about this deal for this hotel in this foreign country. How is that going to work?
Well, you just wait and see. I mean, on the 15th, the announcement will be made in December in a couple weeks. But what people should glean from all of this is that there is a plan that's being worked on. There are really smart ethics lawyers that are involved. But look, people understood what Donald Trump, what he did in his businesses before he was elected. I mean, it would be nuts to believe that he was elected knowing the things that he built, the hospitality that he's a part of, the retail aspect of his businesses, 3 weeks ago, and then to expect all of that to just fizzle away the next day. It's just not reasonable. All
right. We'll look forward to hearing more about that and the rally tomorrow in Indiana. Reince, thank you very much. Good to see you as always.
You bet, Martha.
I want to bring in Tucker Carlson right now, host of Tucker Carlson Tonight on the Fox News Channel, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. How are you doing, hashtag? Call you hashtag Tucker now. You're
Good morning, Bill.
Congratulations on the new show. It's going great, by the way, too. So congrats on all that. I get the real sense that Trump's working hard on this with the Romney deal. And they're trying to figure out if the chemistry is right or not. What do you think?
For sure. And with all these picks, you're seeing not just chemistry between the president-elect and the nominee, but you're seeing sort of an intentional plan. So Tom Price at HHS what's the point of that? Well, the point is he's going to be the guy who overturns or tries to overturn repeal and replace Obamacare. What's the point of Elaine Chao at transportation? Well, there's an infrastructure bill coming up, and she obviously has a lot of experience in the executive branch. She's also married to the top Republican in the Senate. So there's a reason. On the Romney question, it's a little harder to see because one of the key questions about the State Department is what do you do with all the climate change work that John Kerry has been doing? This has gotten relatively little publicity, but that's been one of the main focuses of the State Department in the second term of President Obama, is all this global warming stuff. And where's Mitt Romney on that? So there's a very basic policy question, and I don't know the answer to that, but if he became Secretary of State, that would be one of the first questions he faced. What do you do with all this stuff?
And you imagine that as part of the conversation, trying to figure out if they're on the same page.
You'd hope.
But in the bigger sense, I think you're right about that. Every pick has a purpose based on the campaign that we just came through, Tucker.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So people underestimate, I think, the degree to which presidents in their first term really do try to enact the things that they talked about on the campaign trail. That's what's the mandate? The mandate is the campaign speech. It's the thing that the candidate told the voters he was for, and they voted on the basis of. And so if you want to know what President-elect Trump is going to try to do, you know, pull up the last 5 speeches he gave in the final 2 weeks of the campaign, and you'll kind of get a blueprint for that. And the State Department, that is kind of the one area where you're not really sure. I mean, does Romney have a foreign policy vision anywhere close to that candidate Trump articulated on the trail? I don't know. I haven't seen that. So it's a little bit confusing, but maybe there's something else going on. I mean, it's been sort of opaque. You don't really know what's happening.
Yeah, so the rally tomorrow night in Cincinnati, I think that house is going to be rocking, and we'll see where that goes. And I think this press conference in 2 weeks about how he withdraws himself from the family business. So we await all the news on that. See you tonight at 7 o'clock, okay?
Appreciate it, Bill.
There he is. Hashtag Tucker. You got it. Talk to you real soon. Thanks.
So Vice President-elect Mike Pence heading to Capitol Hill. He's set to meet with congressional leadership. They are speaking to reporters now. You can see Kevin McCarthy is at the microphone. Mike Pence vowing to have a very busy 200 days in the White House. First on the list, Obamacare, repeal and replace. He's got his work cut out for him. Expect to see Mike Pence quite a bit on Capitol Hill, I think, is what we're expecting.
Also, deadly twister.
So Mike Pence is set to be on Capitol Hill later today. They've got a very busy agenda for the first months, really, of the Trump administration. The president-elect announcing this morning that he will officially separate himself from his business and focus solely on running the country. So let's talk about all this with these two guys. Karl Rove served as White House Deputy Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush, and Joe Trippi was campaign manager for Howard Dean's White House run. Both men are Fox News contributors. Hello there, gentlemen. Good to have you here this morning.
Good morning.
I'm interested in your thoughts on Mike Pence, because he already feels like a very active vice president in terms of getting this legislation rolling. Karl, what are you seeing here?
Yeah, look, I think he's the first ambassadorial appointment of the incoming administration, ambassador to Congress, and he'll do a terrific job at it. Mike Pence, I worked with him when I was at the White House. He's a straight shooter. He's a really decent guy. He's a good man to be around. He tells you what he thinks. He asks good questions. He doesn't make judgments quick or harshly. And if he's not going to be with you, he tells you. And as a result, you can have a long-term relationship with him. You can call upon him for advice and counsel. He has keen insights, and he's a straight shooter. So I think that's going to be he was a great pick as vice president. I think he's going to be an even better pick once he gets into office.
So, Joe, you look at the things that they want to get through, and they say they're going to have a busy first 200 days on their agenda. They want to repeal and replace Obamacare, and they want to do some serious tax reform. I think those are two of the biggest ones out of the gate. Can they work with Democrats on that?
Well, they're going to have. They don't have to work with Democrats on it. Frankly, they've got the votes, and that's part of the strength of the Trump win. It's also the strength.
But they don't have the filibuster-proof majority that they would need in some cases, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. So the question is, how big is their attempt to revamp things? Is it so over the top that Democrats will filibuster, or can they make some room there?
I think they might.
Well, it's more about what Trump and Pence do, not what it's what do they put forward. Okay. Once they do, then I think you're going to see. Look, one of the things you got to remember is look at what senators are up in 2018. These are all red state Democrats that are going to be on the ballot in 2018. They're not going to be looking for a fight, I don't think. If there's a reason that they can work together, you're not going to see a lot of those Democrats that are up in 2018 looking to fight. The one thing I agree with Carl, though. The Pence pick is just being shown to be a brilliant pick. Back when he did it, people asked questions. But look, you've got a guy who hasn't been in government, who's now become president of the United States. He needed exactly this kind of vice president, someone who's been governor, been in Washington, served in Congress, knows these members on both sides, and can help turn these policy ideas into law, or at least put them out for a vote and maneuver that for them. And I think a lot of the cabinet picks are helping to do that the same way. No matter how much Democrats don't like it, some of these appointments or nominees, they're actually pretty smart in terms of who has to be confirmed by the Senate, who doesn't, who those people can reach out to help a coalition of votes be put together to make it successful.
You've laid out a scenario, both of you, that makes it look like there's going to be a lot of action and probably a lot of legislation that gets pushed through in these first couple of months. We ran out of time, you guys. I'm sorry about that, but it's good to see you both, and we will see you next time. Thank you, Carl.
Good to be with you.
Thank you, Joe.
Got a Foxable fronts on the Trump transition. The president-elect announcing that he will cut himself out of his own business to focus full-time on running the country. Broke that news today on Twitter. As Mr. Trump nominates two more to be in his cabinet. As we say good morning, a lot of news to get to. Midweek now on a Wednesday. I'm Bill Hammer. Good morning at home. How you doing?
Bill Hammer. Good morning, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum. So there's a lot popping today. As Bill said, President-elect Trump was also out to dinner last night. Have you heard about this? With his former rival, Mitt Romney, along with Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. There they are in the dark, and a beautiful candlelit table for three, just uptown from here a bit. The question of who will be the next Secretary of State probably came in after the how you doing, how's your family, somewhere between the appetizers and the main course, we predict. After the dinner, Governor Romney took some time to talk to the press about the evening and about his former bitter rival.
I've had a wonderful evening with President-elect Trump. We had another discussion about affairs throughout the world, and these discussions I've had with him have been enlightening and interesting and engaging. I've enjoyed them very, very much.
So then, meanwhile, the Trump team announcing two more cabinet picks today. Former Goldman Sachs executive Steve Mnuchin for Treasury Secretary, and Wilbur Ross to lead the Department of Commerce.
Both very close allies of Donald Trump. Peter Ducey is live at Trump Tower this morning. So a lot to get through here this morning, a lot of news popping. So first to the announcement on the Trump Organization, though, that came out mid-morning today, Peter. So why did he not announce this sooner, and what do we expect he will do here?
Martha, the president-elect said this morning that he doesn't have to leave his business by law, but he doesn't want there to appear to be a conflict of interest, and he wants to concentrate more on actually running the United States government. So he says legal documents are now being drawn up to remove him completely from the organization with his name on it. And he says that we're going to get more details about this at a press conference in 2 weeks on December 15th that his kids will also join him at. Martha.
That's going to be fascinating. We've got a lot more coming up on that this morning, exactly how that divestiture of sorts would happen. So in terms of the dinner last night and the pictures that we just showed, what do we think is happening here with the Secretary of State position, Peter?
Something surprising, because something else that Mitt Romney said when he came out of that French restaurant, which was located inside another Trump property, the Trump International Hotel, just around the corner, Romney said he thinks Donald Trump has been doing a good job filling the cabinet with good people, and that gives him hope that the next president is going to lead the United States to its best days.
And what I've seen through these discussions I've had with President-elect Trump, as well as what we've seen in his speech at the night of his victory, as well as the people he selected as part of his transition, all of those things combined give me increasing hope that President-elect Trump is the very man who can lead us to that better future.
Romney also conceded that Mr. Trump did something that is not easy, winning an election, and Romney said he knows that it's not easy from personal experience.
Yeah, that was an interesting comment. He said that America's best days are ahead of it, which is a line that he used a lot on the campaign trail and kind of lines up with the Make America Great line as well. So more on that coming up as well. So what about the pick for Treasury and Secretary? Those are the latest two spots to be filled, Peter.
They are, and they're going to be filled, if the Senate confirms them, by two guys who made a lot of money outside the government, who now are willing and have accepted the responsibility to lend their expertise to the government. First up would be Steven Mnuchin. He joined the Trump campaign as National Finance Director back in April, and 7 months later, he's the nominee to run the Treasury Department. Mnuchin does not have any D.C. experience, but he is well known as an investor in Hollywood and on Wall Street. And this morning, he hinted that the U.S. is about to become a much more attractive place to do business.
We think there's going to be hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars that's going to come back, and that's going to create infrastructure and create jobs.
The president-elect also wants Wilbur Ross to be the Commerce Secretary. He is a billionaire who made his money fixing big businesses that were in distress, and this all fits with what the president-elect said on the campaign trail, that the Make America Great Again mantra would be just turning things around. Yeah. Martha?
Fascinating. Peter, thank you very much.
I want to bring in Trump supporter now, former governor of Arkansas, Fox News contributor Mike Huckabee. Governor, good morning to you, and thanks for coming back to our program here.
Great to be back.
I want to start quickly with Trump, Inc. Can he effectively extract himself from a lifetime of business that he has spent creating, essentially?
Well, I think he can completely extract himself from the day-to-day operations. What I hope he doesn't do is extract himself from the principles that he learned running businesses. I hope he takes those to Washington. I hope that he applies them to agencies, that he understands that personnel is policy and good policy is good politics. And if he understands that and employs the same things that made him an incredibly successful businessman, he'll be a terrific president. So let's hope he brings those qualities with him to the White House.
Okay, Mitt Romney, the dinner last night, I know you're not a fan. However, do you see yourself changing your mind?
It's not so much a personal... No, it's not a personal feeling, but I did note, Bill, and I don't know if your cameras picked it up, you saw the little clip, but both Reince Priebus and Donald Trump were having filet. On Mitt Romney's plate, there was a big, big slice of crow. And so I didn't know if you could catch that or not. Look, the irony here is that it's not so much about the relationship that Donald Trump has with Mitt Romney. It's the relationship that Mitt Romney has with the voters who elected Donald Trump. Because Mitt Romney said that they were a bunch of suckers to follow him. So at some point, Mitt Romney has to address that, because I think that the outrage that's being expressed among many Trump supporters is that it wasn't that Romney just dissed Donald Trump, but that he really took a swipe and spoke contemptuously of the people who made Donald Trump the president of the United States.
Well, I picked up on two things this morning. Jason Miller earlier said that they had good chemistry last night. And Reince Priebus on another network said a decision on Secretary of State is not imminent. Given that, why do you think Mr. Trump is working so hard on this relationship with Romney?
You know, that's one I can't answer. I think he wants to show that he's a person who is not going to hold a grudge, and I think that's an important message to send to Democrats. It's an important message to send to Republicans who didn't support him. But he also needs to surround himself with people who are going to be loyal to him and are going to have respect for him, because ultimately he's going to make decisions, and his cabinet members are not going to be out there making their own decisions and going rogue. They're going to have to say, yes, sir, Mr. President, that's your decision. I'm going to go carry it out. And they need to be able to do it with a sense of true dispatch. If they can't do that, they shouldn't be on the cabinet.
I almost get the sense that he's testing his loyalty and listening to the words that he uses, Governor Romney, that is, after the meeting. Keep an eye on that. Now for his picks so far in the nominations, etc. Some people are outside of Washington. Some people are not, frankly. Do you believe, based on these picks so far and those that are yet to come, that he is keeping his word with his supporters that he carried through the campaign, Governor?
Well, I think he is. And one of the things I was really happy about, the appointment of Mnuchin and Wilbur Ross, great picks. These are people who made their money in business. They understand how government can make it hard on them. If they can go in and get rid of a lot of the unnecessary regulations, particularly on small businesses and entrepreneurs and startups, it would have a dramatic impact. The cost of regulation, over $2 trillion a year. The cost of tax compliance in this country is over $500 billion a year. Think about that. We don't produce anything by complying with the tax code. All we do is produce some paperwork and make it very difficult for the small business owner to comply, because he doesn't have the economy of scale to be able to spread that out over his business. So, yeah, I think these are great picks that he has shown so far, and these are people who know how to walk in and make changes.
Well,
now,
it's
something they're going to find, Bill.
Yeah, go ahead quickly.
Let me just say this. One thing they're going to find out: the government doesn't operate like a business. You can't fire bureaucrats and you can't fire legislators. It's a real different atmosphere. And that'll be a learning curve for anybody who has not served in government before.
My sense is it's a results-based administration. Whether inside government, outside government, the results are what will count starting in January. Thank you, Governor. Hope you shake that cold very soon. Bye, company.
Me too.
On the road. Get better. Thanks, sir.
So House Democrats now holding their leadership elections behind closed doors this morning. Tim Ryan taking on Nancy Pelosi for the role of minority leader. Pelosi has been in House leadership for nearly 2 decades. Tim Ryan's from Ohio, a state that went Republican this year. He says Democrats must make their case to Middle America if they want to regain control of the House.
I think people remember the election. It was only 2 weeks ago, and I think their constituents are expecting a certain amount of change to come. If you're a strong Democrat, you're recognizing that, what we're doing isn't working, and we want to be back in the majority.
So he's got 8 members who are publicly supporting him, but Pelosi is an expert politician on the Hill, and she is expected to win the secret ballot and hang on to that.
Looks like some fights are starting to develop if you listen to Senator Schumer on the Senate side, too, for some of the picks.
A lot of reflection time for Democrats.
We'll debate that coming up, too. Yeah. Also, another Fox News alert now. We're keeping a very close eye now on Tennessee.
Stunning story here. ISIS praising the Ohio State University attacker as one of their, quote, soldiers. The terror group claiming responsibility for the attack by the Somali-born student. On Monday, he rammed his car into pedestrians and then got out and started slashing people with a butcher knife. We're now hearing the frantic 911 call for the first time. Listen.
Yes, Watts Hall on OSU's campus. Somebody just drove through a crowd full of people. He's not firing a gun. Or I don't know who's firing a gun. Looks like a campus police officer.
Okay.
You just drove through. We need an ambulance here fast, please. There's a guy hit. He's on the ground. There's another person on the ground.
So frightening. President-elect Donald Trump tweeted in response to the incident, quote, ISIS taking credit for the terrible stabbing attack at Ohio State University by a Somali refugee who should not have been in our country, he writes. Artan was admitted to the United States in 2014 as the child of a refugee. Shortly before the attack, he reportedly warned about what he saw as mistreatment of Muslims on social media.
Mr. Trump hitting the road tomorrow and Thursday for what's being called a thank you tour with his first rally in Cincinnati, Ohio. But today, he's back at the Tower working to fill out his cabinet. With me now, Republican Tennessee Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn. She's a member of the Trump transition team. She was at the Tower yesterday. Thanks for your time today.
Yes, and had a great visit yesterday.
Well, let me ask you about that, because there are a lot of jobs still on the board. Which one do you want?
Oh, I have told Mr. Trump I am certainly a willing participant in the team to get things done. That could mean staying in Congress. It could mean coming to a position in the administration. But, Bill, that is all Mr. Trump's story to tell. It is Mr. Trump's opportunity to make certain that he pulls together a team that he knows is going to work together and bring about change for the American people. That's what they
I fully
voted
respect your answer. How do you sell yourself in one of these meetings? Take us inside the Tower. How does it work?
I think it's not so much selling yourself. It is more a position of being there to help achieve what he has laid out as his goals. And we know that he is a pro at doing more with less. He is a pro at coming in ahead of schedule and under budget, and that is what you're going to see a Trump administration do. That's going to mean there are departments that have to be right-sized and downsized. It's going to mean that Congress is going to have to get busy statutorily working through the process of repositioning and reforming and innovating government for the 21st century. I think this is one of the most exciting times that has ever been, because you're actually going to bring to bear the technologies and the applications and have the opportunity to get rid of divisions and agencies and programs that have outlived their usefulness. You're going to have the opportunity to go in and, instead of 130 economic development programs, let's have one or two. Let's make this something that people
it's starting to shape up like quite a fight. You know, Senator Schumer sent some signals yesterday in the Senate side. Democrats are ready to, they're ready for a few battles. Is all of this easier said than done?
I think that it is going to be wonderful to see the Democrats try to protect the status quo. After we have had an election, and as you've heard me say for about 18 months, this is an outsider year. We would have an outsider nominee for president, and this would be an administration that would bring about change. And that is exactly what has happened, Bill. So if the Democrats want to come in line and protect the status quo and say they want more government centralized in Washington, D.C., and they want higher taxes to pay for it, let them take that argument to the American people. I just don't think people are buying it, and they're going to stand for it.
All right, 3 quick questions, rapid fire.
Sure.
Reince Priebus said this morning he doesn't think a decision is imminent on Secretary of State. Does that sound right with what you're hearing?
I think that Mr. Trump is the one who knows who will be the next Secretary of State.
Got it. Thank you. Tour starts tomorrow. What's that all about? Why is it important?
He won this going to the people, and I think this is a way for him to get back out there and to affirm the choices that he is making. It is a time for him to say thank you. He is so grateful for the support of the American people, and to do this tour, I think, is well placed.
Final question. Out of order, but final question. Why is he working so hard to win over Mitt Romney?
Mr. Trump is someone who practices forgiveness. You can talk to people that have worked with him in business. He knows that securing our nation's place in the world, our security, making America great again, is bigger than any personality. He won this election by focusing on principles and on policies and on change, not on personalities. And he is bringing that to bear as he is inviting in his foes.
Marsha Blackburn, thank you for your time. Back at Capitol Hill.
With you, Bill.
You bet. Thank you. Martha.
President-elect Donald Trump keeping his word on a campaign promise.
You have to fight to keep your companies. Now, do you think anybody in the Obama administration goes to see Carrier and say, stay here? You're right. I would speak with the folks at Carrier, and I would say, if you leave, there are consequences.
It's a big headline on this today. The new administration expected to announce that hundreds of manufacturing jobs will remain in this country.
Also, the nominee to be the next Treasury Secretary talks about tax reform as his main objective. We'll break down how he sees a transformation of the American economy at home and abroad. Next.
Carrier, here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Indiana. You're going to leave Indianapolis. I wish you a lot of luck in Mexico. Enjoy the heat. Enjoy the heat. And I hope you build a really beautiful factory. But here's what's going to happen. Every single air conditioning unit that you make, we will be charging you a 35% tax. Every single unit.
This is what we call the art of the deal, folks. Donald Trump on the campaign trail taking a tough line on a company that had thought maybe they might move 1,400 some jobs down to Mexico. Donald Trump said he didn't think that was a great idea. Now it looks like it is paying off. Carrier has reached an agreement with the president-elect, and the vice president also had a hand in this as well, we should say, that will keep close to 1,000 jobs in Indianapolis, scrapping that plan to move part of their operations to Mexico. The president-elect tweeting yesterday, "I will be going to Indiana on Thursday to make a major announcement concerning Carrier AC staying in Indianapolis. Great deal for the workers." Maria Bartiromo, host of Mornings with Maria on Fox Business, as well as Sunday Morning Futures here on the Fox News Channel. Maria, good morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Martha.
So pretty good deal making so far with Carrier.
Really good deal making.
Why did they give in?
Martha, remember when 8 months ago we learned of Carrier's plans, and some of the employees at Carrier were hearing for the first time that they may very well be on the chopping block? It was a horrible story. Everybody was talking about it. Look, part of the reason that they agreed is what Donald Trump just said. There would be tariffs on, things coming from Mexico, and he's threatening that he is going to make it much more expensive if you produce products overseas and try to get them back into the country. It's amazing to me how many companies are just getting in line even before Donald Trump takes office. You've got Apple considering making iPhones in the U.S. You've got others basically saying, wait a second, we want to get behind the president-elect. This is really good news.
It is incredible. United Technologies is the parent company, right, of Carrier.
That's right.
They sell the U.S. government a lot of jets and defense equipment. Just talk business to these folks, right? Some of those deals might be in jeopardy as well, and we'd really appreciate it if you kept the jobs here.
Exactly. And when you consider the fact that they will be seeing a huge improvement to their own bottom line by staying in America, he's going to take the corporate tax rate down to 15%. He's going to make it incentivized for companies to actually do business here in America. And that's what it's all about.
It's got to work for both sides, and apparently they came up with something that was going to work for both sides here, which is, it's just fascinating, as you say. The idea that Apple would start making phones here, which Steve Jobs personally told President Obama would never happen.
Well, not with this tax rate.
Right. He said it would never happen, is now looking like it may happen. So let's move on to your interview this morning with Steve Mnuchin and Wilbur Ross, Commerce Secretary for Ross, Treasury Secretary for Mnuchin. What can we expect from these gentlemen?
Look, I think you're going to expect what they've been talking about. Even if it is a threat of tariffs, even if it is, hey, we're going to look at NAFTA and we're going to rip it up and we're going to try to do it again, it sounds like it could be disruptive, and maybe, the people against this are saying, well, we don't want disruption on trade. But at the same time, if it's not advantageous to America, Wilbur Ross is going to look at it, Donald Trump is going to look at it, and he will redo it. Today, Wilbur Ross told me that he's going to be looking at NAFTA to redo that, and there is no TPP. Forget about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This is his quote, Martha, "It's not happening." As far as Stephen Mnuchin, his top priority is tax reform. In the first 90 days of his administration, he's cutting taxes.
Right. That's going to be really welcome news to a lot of corporations across this country who may expand their operations based on that kind of sweet deal for them or better deal from them. Here's a bit of Maria's interview with Steve Mnuchin this morning.
Our number one priority is sustained 3 to 4% GDP. I think it's very achievable. This has been an administration for the last 8 years where we haven't had enough growth. Our number one priority is going to be tax reform. We think that by lowering the corporate tax rate, we're going to make U.S. corporations incredibly competitive and create enormous amounts of money that comes back onshore and creates jobs.
Which is exactly what you just said. What do you say to those who say, look, these guys are Wall Street insiders, they're Palm Beach folks who are friends of Donald Trump's? How do you answer that?
I think it's better to have a business person in charge of these decisions after the last decade of not having business people in these jobs, because they understand what it takes to motivate companies to create jobs, invest in America. And that's what's critical here. You've got a guy who, yes, was at Goldman Sachs, Stephen Mnuchin, and another guy, Wilbur Ross, who was running a major steel company. They understand the impact of the highest tax rate in the world. We're going from 35% on the corporate tax rate to 15%. What is that going to do to corporate earnings? That's why the stock market has been rallying the way it is, as you know. And I think that people could say that, these people have been in business, but you don't want someone who doesn't know anything. You don't want someone who doesn't really understand how business works and how to motivate companies to invest and create jobs.
Yeah. Everyone's going to be focused on whether or not these deals are good for consumers, and I think if they are, they'll be fine with these people being in charge, and we'll see what what they do to the hedge fund tax rate, which Trump has said he's going to raise, right? And Mnuchin runs a hedge fund, so that'll be something to hold their feet to the fire on as well.
Well, look, I mean, he's talking mostly about corporate tax rates and personal income taxes coming down. But you're right, he's not interested in the so-called fat cats.
Yeah. All right. Very interesting, Maria. Thank you. Great interview.
Well, it's the power of Maria. I mean, as she talks, I mean, the market moves. I mean, have you seen this? Look at the Dow. It's up 75 points at the open. Okay.
Remember when we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, I said I would be buying this market with both hands.
With both hands, she said. Remember that?
I do. We got it. Thanks, Maria. A lifetime of work in his own company now will be placed to the side. That, as Mr. Trump says, he will extract himself entirely from his business. Will that move answer questions about a conflict of interest? Jason Chaffetz chairs the House Oversight Committee. We'll talk to him live about all that coming up in a moment from Capitol Hill.
And wildfire out of control in Tennessee, taking lives, forcing evacuations, threatening some iconic tourist attractions there. The latest on this vicious fire that is ongoing.
When you've got wind up to 87 miles an hour pushing fire, I mean, people were basically running for their lives.
President-elect Donald Trump revealing his intentions to turn his businesses over to his children. On December the 15th, Mr. Trump releasing a series of tweets this morning that read like this. You got to go connect the tweets here this morning. I will be holding a major news conference in New York City with my children on December 15 to discuss the fact that I will be leaving my great business in total in order to fully focus on running the country in order to make America great again. While I am not mandated to do this under law, I feel it is visually important as president to in no way have a conflict of interest with my various businesses. He goes on, hence legal documents are being crafted which take me completely out of business operations. The presidency is a far more important task, exclamation point. Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz of Utah is chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, under which a lot of these issues would fall. Chairman Chaffetz, good to have you here this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning.
So this is expected. He said throughout the course of the campaign that he would turn the businesses over to his children, but because it's so unprecedented to have, privately held company CEO become president of the United States, what concerns you about disentangling himself from all of this?
Well, look, Donald Trump is doing the right thing. He wants to get beyond the appearance. There is no legal requirement that he do these things, so I'm encouraged by what he is doing and the structure that he is setting up. I think the criticism will come particularly from the Democrats, the questions about the children, the proximity to their father, but this is a very big, complex organization. But Donald Trump's financial disclosures, they're available online. People can go look at them already. So I know Democrats have already been, chopping at our heels wanting an investigation, but information's available online. Understood. He hasn't even been sworn in yet, so he's doing the right thing.
I guess people across the country have watched you go after Hillary Clinton very hard in terms of the emails, the email question, Benghazi, all of that. So they will expect in your role as oversight that you will be equally diligent under the Trump administration. Can you pledge to them that you will?
Oh, absolutely. My job is not to be a cheerleader for the president, but to provide vigorous oversight. In the case of Hillary Clinton, when she was the Secretary of State and she was a member of the government, it was the Inspector General that actually started and found out that there was classified information in a non-secure setting, and so we reacted to that. But my goodness, let Donald Trump actually get into office. But I'm sure there will come a point where Donald Trump may be none too happy with us. But that's the role of Congress, is to provide oversight of the executive branch, and I pledge to absolutely do that.
I got it.
But let him get sworn in first.
Understood. I saw Jim Jordan this morning, also on your committee, of course, the congressman, basically saying that he would pursue the issues that you all had gone after with Hillary Clinton. Where do you stand on that? Are we going to see more investigation of Hillary Clinton or not?
Well, a political election does not extinguish the need for transparency, truth, and justice. And the complexity in which the scheme was set up, there is the email federal records issue, there's the Clinton Foundation issue, there's the perjury issue, there's the fact that the State Department still has its own open investigation on classified material. There are tens of thousands of documents that the State Department has still not turned over to the United States Congress that should be available.
So the investigations that you have overseen, those are continuing and ongoing, and you'll be having more hearings. I mean, I think a lot of people, think maybe that the country is ready to move on from Hillary Clinton's issues, that she sort of got the worst punishment imaginable on November 8th. Do you agree with that?
Well, we want to get to the truth, and let's at least look at all the evidence and all the information. And I still think that the federal government needs to provide to Congress the records which we saw it. And so we still want to understand all of that. And there's issues related to the Department of Justice. We can't just simply let this go. If the president or the president-elect wants to pardon Secretary Clinton for the good of the nation, that is their option. But I have a duty and an obligation to actually fix the problems that were made with Hillary Clinton.
All right. Lots more to talk about here, and we'll do it in the coming weeks. We'll see what that arrangement looks like on December the 15th, and look forward to talking to you again about it. Thank you very much, Congressman Chaffetz.
So former Governor Mitt Romney now sitting down with Mr. Trump and Reince Priebus. What did they talk about? We'll talk to the incoming chief of staff in a moment. He joins us live at the top of the hour. Reince Priebus is here today. Also, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich on the 3 keys to success in Washington that Mr. Trump must abide by. First, though, here's Mike Pence.
I'm absolutely confident that he's going to choose the right person in every single one of these cases that he believes is going to be best equipped to move his agenda forward and, more importantly, move the country forward.
House. Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich now saying there are 3 big challenges Mr. Trump first must overcome in order to fulfill his promise. Number 1, here it is. The normal will try to convince the leader to be reasonable. Number 2, know that solving symptoms of the problem is not the same as solving the problem itself. Number 3, the urgent drives out the important. Keep the focus on the big issues. Let's talk about that with Miki Konst, host of The Filter on SiriusXM Progress, and Rich Lowry, editor of National Review and a Fox News contributor. Good day to both of you. There are some gems in this piece, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. I think Gingrich really cuts through a lot of this. And Rich, frankly, he would know because he's been there and did it.
He has been there, and he draws on his experience in this piece, which I thought was really quite acute. And if you want to sum it up, Bill, it comes down to be big and bold, and don't get distracted by the small stuff. And any new presidency, you basically have a golden hour of the first year where you have an opportunity to do big things legislatively. And if the Trump White House and the Republican Congress can keep it together and keep the focus on the ball, they're going to repeal a lot of Obamacare, repeal a bunch of regulation, and pass big tax reform and really have a chance to set out to achieve that goal Steve Mnuchin talked about today of 3-4% GDP growth, which would be a wonderful thing for the country.
It seems like they're hitting on these same themes consistently. No, Miki, I thought the one line that stuck out with me from the Gingrich piece, I will cooperate, but I will not compromise. And apparently said that 3 days after the Republicans won over the House after being shut out for nearly 50 years.
Yes, and let's remember that Speaker Gingrich, who uses examples of things that he said he didn't compromise on, were all bills that were compromised, whether it was welfare reform or balancing the budget. You have to work with the other side. That's just how our government works. With that being said, it is a great piece. In theory, it sounds brilliant, but there's a lot of platitudes in here. Speaker Gingrich uses this analogy of the president focusing on the big meat, like if he were a hunter, to focus on the big game and have his the people he appoints go after the chipmunks, eat the chipmunks, the smaller goals along the way. But the problem is, as Speaker says, use those people to drain the swamp, to commit to your promises. But if that were true, those people that he has appointed are all part of the problem. They're lobbyists. They're bureaucrats, lifelong bureaucrats. They're former billionaires, current billionaires from Goldman Sachs. They have conflicts of interest. So if he does want to commit to his promises, he has to commit to them at all levels of government.
They will be judged based on results, too. Just come back to the focus here for a moment. I think you could argue that President Obama had the same singular focus when he went after health care in the beginning. I think you could probably argue that he went after some of the chipmunks that Gingrich talked about, that Ronald Reagan referred to. And, Rich, I think about Professor Gates at Harvard when that thing blew up and really backfired in a beer summit. You think about Bo Bergdahl. I mean, he hit some of the traps that Gingrich is trying to say, avoid them at all costs.
Right. He got sucked into the vortex of these media controversies to some extent. And that happened, ironically, to Newt as well in a speakership and really helped undermine his speakership. But President Obama, you're right, he used this golden hour we were just talking about to pass big things, Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, big spending bill. They just happened to be the wrong things for the country and didn't work.
I wouldn't agree necessarily with that. I think that there are millions of people who are uninsured and who were going bankrupt at the time and now have access to health insurance, and we just hope it will get better. I mean, that's the problem now is you have Republicans across the country in districts who have been campaigning against Obamacare, but those in their districts, whether the Republican or Democrats, are using Obamacare. What are you going to do, strip their health insurance?
I think the big problem is this, and Gingrich summarizes it. Developing Trumpism as a governing system will be an enormous job. Draining the swamp in Washington is going to be an enormous job. Rich, yes or no? Does he do it or not?
I don't think he drains the swamp. The swamp is never going away. I think he can make the government smaller and more effective if he works with the Republican Congress towards that goal, and he can make the economy grow. And I think really that is the biggest metric here. He set it out for himself in the campaign. It's one most voters will use to judge him by. It's not by random tweets. Is the economy growing? Is the labor market getting tighter? Are wages going up?
And that comes back to results. No, Mickey, be gracious.
I agree. It's all about the economy. Let's see if he can. It's all about the economy. I hope that he can bring American jobs back, increase wages. You know, because that's why the Democrats lost. To be honest.
That sounded pretty gracious to me, Bill.
I think so. Right on. Thanks, no, Mickey.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Rich. Get rid of that cold, okay? I mean, you and Huckabee.
I'm working on it.
Sharing the same glass of water. You can't keep doing that. Thank you, guys.